There are a lot of termites, and this platform is suffering as a result of their appetite. A good representation of anicca, impermanence. I prefer not to have any platforms, and one can sit on the floor, which is a little less prone to such erosion. However, it's here, so I'll make the most of it whilst it is, and we're going to talk about some of your comments and questions. I'll get straight on with that. Hello friends, welcome, namaste. You may hear some interesting sounds in the background. I think it's some Hindu or religious festival today here, because on walking into the village this morning, Pindapart, there were people all dressed up and many flowers and decorations on the pavements, so all very pretty. So you might hear some sounds, which is one of the questions or comment from a subscriber saying it's pleasant to hear the Indian sounds in the morning, at the live chanting in the backgrounds, the birds, the nature, the wildlife. And yes, it is. But it's not all the sounds that are pleasant. It can get quite busy in the day. I've got some mechanical machinery buzzing away in the background there. The electronic pylons over there buzz as you go near them. But it's just hearing. We take all auditory perception as just that. Not a distraction, not something for judgment, either from comparison to the past or our expectations of it to continue or to finish sooner rather than later. However it may be, if we can leave it at just sound, ears hearing sound, and just that, this is letting go of aversion or letting go of delight, pleasure, sensual desire that we may find in sound. And it's not to say we can't enjoy all beautiful things we see, beautiful things we hear, beautiful aromas we smell, tastes we taste, and so on. We can appreciate, for all their goodness, those wonderful things in life, as long as we understand they're in this present moment, here and now, for the enjoyment, and we understand their impermanence, anicca. Much like this platform, all good things will come to an end, as will bad things. Suffering and pain also is impermanent, is temporary, a temporary state, and something that will cease in some time. So the first question, I'll just skip the first wonderful comments, thank you very much, but how can someone with religious convictions deal with friends who have averse convictions? Like, I want to help, but I'm open to running away. Well, just walk away, don't run. There's no need to run, but you can just walk away. I guess you mean by averse convictions towards your own particular religion. Now, there are many religions in the world, many beliefs that are non-religious, philosophies, or people's just general ideas, political views, or just opinions of something or other. The preference of a particular sporting team, a football team or cricket club, something like this. We have differences of opinion. But you don't have to argue your point of view, your opinion, your belief is best. If you're confident in that, it is enough. Just be with that. If people want to inflict and argue their opinion on you, it's generally because they're not so confident, not so secure in their convictions, in their belief, in their, even perhaps their understanding. I get some very quite hard comments with regards to any comments I make comparing Buddhism to Christianity generally provokes quite a harsh response from the Christian community, in that it is misquoting maybe a particular Bible verse, or there is a particular Bible verse which can undermine what maybe I have said. Well, of course, there are very many Bible verses taken out of context that can undermine any particular comment anyone makes, as there is vice versa in any religious scripture. If you take a sentence out of a novel, out of a book, and quote it ad lib, just quote that sentence, it will have opposing views without any doubt. But if you have the absolute firm understanding, knowledge in your faith, saddha, faith is the Pali word is saddha for faith, which really means rather than faith as in the devotional religious believing sense, it means confidence. If you have absolute confidence in your understanding, here we go, of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, the way out of that suffering, so that there is suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, which is reached by following the Noble Eightfold Path. If you have an understanding of that, and you know that it is true, there is suffering, it's quite hard to deny. There is no belief behind that, so you have absolute confidence. Now this is what we call saddha, faith. It's not a belief, it's an absolute conviction, because it's the truth. You can't argue with the truth. Once you know the truth, it's impossible to unknow it. It's there. With that confidence, that faith, anything that's thrown at you, which is just a quote from a religious scripture, a sentence that somebody has chosen to believe, it means nothing. It's, as you say, water off a duck's back. It's any amount of Bible quotes, and I'm a very big, not believer, I very much appreciate the writings in the Bible and enjoy reading the Bible. Not so much now, but I used to, but make reference to it quite often. It's a most wonderful religious scripture, both the New Testament and the Old Testament. If understood correctly, if interpreted correctly, and if acted upon relevantly to the community, the society, the day and age we're living in today. As is the same that can be said for the Buddhist religious scriptures and perhaps any other, the Quran, the Muslim, the Islamic faith scriptures, and the Old Testament of the Abrahamic faiths. So it's a case of confidence that what you're practicing is right, means you don't have any need to have any argument. But if people wish to argue with you, you can just walk away. So the answer is just walk away but don't run, or change the subject if they're friends. And there is usually, I don't know whether it's a saying, but it's something people say in my country, I heard once, or many times, I don't know, but subjects not to talk about at the dinner table, for instance, were religion, politics, and something else, I can't remember, because they can be quite provocative. So if we're maintaining right speech and just an amiable context for our relationships with others, then one can just avoid certain subjects. We're not Buddhists to promote religion, it's not necessary, it promotes itself. People will see the advancements you make in your life, the improvements you make in your life, question, inquire, and be interested. If they like what they see, those changes in you, and then maybe they'll come to Buddhism that way. If not, then that's okay. We're not to push, to promote, to proselytize, to be evangelical on a soapbox. We're just to live a living example as how the Buddha taught. So just let it go. And a lot of religion, I certainly find, even my own in Buddhism, seems to be, rather than this teaching of the Buddha about letting go, it seems to be about acquisition almost some religious fanatics become kleptomaniacs, hoarders of not even necessarily rites and rituals, but procedure and the way things are done, the way one, even to the way people wear their robes, for instance. Now, of course, there are certain prescribed ways in the Buddhist practice, in our Vinaya, in our rules, as to what we must do as laid down by the Buddha, and that is inflexible, other than in circumstances of ill health or dire need or somebody else's ill health. So we must never do harm either to ourselves or others for the sake of our rules. However, we must not break our rules, especially the cardinal rules, the main ones, under any circumstances, or we are no longer monks, we are disrobed. But on top of that can be layers and layers and layers of other procedures and activities that seem to dominate practitioners' lives unnecessarily, and rather than being a practice of letting go, becomes a practice of, let's say, for example, learning, gaining qualifications. Now this is something that's eluded me somewhat, the desire to be qualified in faith. I think one should build the faith from the practice upwards, and this is all the qualifications one needs. It can, as an aside, certainly be a useful hobby, pastime and interest, if you have time for such things. Personally, I don't find time for much other than my practice, even with a very simple life, having let go of everything I possibly can, really everything I possibly can. I think someone commented some while back that I haven't let go of anything. Well, I don't think I replied. I don't know. I always reply something. If you get just 3 dots, it means I've seen your comment. I've even liked it. I like it because that just gives me a little symbol to know I've seen it. 3 dots means, but I've got nothing to say on that. And my 3 dots can mean anything. It can mean Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It can mean, if it's to a Christian, it can mean the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. It can mean Sila, Samadhi, Panya. It can mean Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. It's 3 dots. It's my magic reply. It's a privilege if you get 3 dots. It can also mean that maybe you should think about what you've said a little more. But it means I'm not going to comment. Rather than saying no comment, 3 dots is my reply. So to that I said 3 dots. I wondered, what more can I let go of? I can't let go of my 8 requisites. They are a requirement of the monk because it is necessary. He's possibly referring to this activity. I should think mainly this activity, and my travelling. Well, I'm homeless. I have no choice other than to travel. I'm in a country. I'm not welcome to stay in this country longer than a certain amount of time. And that is, I'm not just saying that as in I'm getting at the authorities. It is, they're very adamant on your arrival. They want you to tell them then when you're leaving. And when you say, I'm going to stay my maximum, my 180 days, they're not happy about that. So there is some travelling. It's relatively inexpensive, however, to travel within Asia, from, say, India to Sri Lanka to India, or India to Thailand. It's not like flying across the world. And it's not anywhere near the costs of flying within Europe, for instance, to holiday destinations. In fact, I pay more to go from the train, the airport in Heathrow, the train, or even the coach, costs twice as much to get to my mother's house, which is only 70 miles. So that is about 100 or 120 kilometres from Heathrow Airport to my mother's house near Southampton. It costs twice as much as it costs me to fly from here to Bangkok in Thailand, or the same price from here to Colombo in Sri Lanka. So a train or a coach in the UK costs twice as much as that flight, so it's not a cost. It is a shame, yes, about the greenhouse gases of flying and so on and so forth, but I've yet to find a safe and effective way of getting from A to B. I could just stay in one place, yes, but it's quite difficult in the UK to live homelessly in one place, and if you move around you're not necessarily going to get fed because people don't get to know you. So this is a lot of the reason. If I want to live outside of a community, a fixed monastic community of acquisition, I'm beginning to think of them, communities of acquisition, acquirement and hoarding, because they build here, this beautiful little situation here. The monk over there at the moment, there was a nice wooden piece of, not furniture, just a piece of wood that one could just sit on if one felt like it, like a little bench. But he's now attached all these other pieces of wood to it, and now he's painting them bright yellow, which is keeping him occupied. He's a young man, he needs something to do, but it's a completely unnecessary activity. We sit on the floor as monks and no one else comes here, but it's human nature to build and create. They're building the kutis over there. Well, you can sleep in a tent, you can live in a tent here. My kuti is infested now completely with termites, and even though it's brick, it's not wood, but because they store some wooden furniture in there. So sleeping outside in a tent, I don't have this problem. So as a monk who needs very little and has let go of everything that you possibly really can let go of, you continue in that vein in your nomadic quest, moving from place to place, to be fed, but to practice as long as one can within daylight hours and through the night, comfortably and safely, without affecting others, without making yourself an imposition on society, with very little needs. This is how I've chosen to live, and I'm not saying that's the right way, but it's in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. I really went off the subject there, I'm sure, but anyway, I'm stuck with my life due to my anxiety. Okay, we're all stuck with our lives as we know them at the moment, until they end. And this should be remembered to arouse urgency in our practice, that we're of the subject to age, to sicken, and to die. This we cannot avoid. Now, if we choose during our lives to worry about the past and also worry about the future, then we're going to develop some anxiety. Now, there is a real condition of anxiety I fully appreciate, and it's often coupled with depression. They go hand in hand. One or the other, and both especially, are debilitating conditions. There are videos on this channel concerning this subject, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but just one very simple, quick exercise with regards to anxiety. Just come back to the body and see where it is. Now, by that, what I mean is, when you feel this feeling of anxiety arising, as it does, like a little fluttering in and around here, this middle of your torso, the solar plexus, around the diaphragm, bring your awareness into that area and breathe in through your nose deeply. And you'll actually feel, as you breathe in through your nose deeply, it kind of exacerbates the discomfort a little. It makes the fluttering a little more obvious. But then really notice it and understand it and see it for what it is. It is a feeling, a physical feeling in the middle of your body here. And know it is just that. And what is going on in your mind? What is going on in your mind is a reaction to that feeling that, oh, this is anxiety now. And that then creates a little more of this physical feeling here. So all emotional feelings have a corresponding physical feeling, as do physical feelings have a corresponding emotional feeling. So if I bang my thumb with a hammer, it's going to hurt, and the emotional feeling will arise of aversion, disliking, or not wanting to do that again, so pulling the hammer away. The two go together. So when one experiences this either through firstly the recognition of anxiety in the mind, bring it into the body, your awareness into the body. When you feel it in the body as a debilitating consequence of anxiety, then understand it in the body and it will reduce it in the mind. It brings it into reality. It also brings it into this present moment. So within just a few breaths in and out into this area of the body, noticing it, being aware of it, you can reduce the symptoms of anxiety, and that in turn reduces the cause. If the cause is something that's in the future, it hasn't happened yet, you can't do anything about it, and it's just imagination, it might not happen. Similarly, if it was a cause from the past, then you are unable to change the past. It's too late, it's gone. Leave it, let it go. We're not generally getting anxiety from something that's actually happening now in the present. If you've ever experienced the anxiety, the nervousness of, say, performing, speaking in public, or taking a driving test, or taking an exam, right up until the minute you begin, you're more and more and more anxious as soon as your pen touches the paper or your hands are on the steering wheel. Maybe not in that case, it's a little different, driving tests. But as soon as you start speaking, the anxiety's gone, just like that. Because you're in the moment, you're doing what you're needing to do. Your body's chemical reactions have overtaken that of anxiety, which is just hormonal reaction to either fight or flight, to either be aggressive and attack or to run away. You can't do this anymore. You're in the situation, all those chemicals go. There's no need, there's no point to them anymore. You can't run away, it's too late, you're there, you're doing the test. You can't fight it, it's there, you're doing it. So you will just continue, the anxiety's gone. Knowing that helps an awful lot. So you're not stuck. We're stuck with our lives, we have these lives, our circumstances to some extent also. But one way of changing circumstances is through that process of letting go, because it's not trying to acquire something different. If you're trying to improve your life, you're trying to acquire a bigger house, a better job, a better this, a better that, a different relationship. We're looking at acquisition again, building things up. When you can bring about this nekama, renunciation, quality of your life, parami, quality of your life, of renunciation and being able to give up things, you can experience the benefits of letting go. And that is a wonderful, wonderful way of really reducing anxiety. Because a lot of anxiety is either wanting, it's coming from desire, wanting something we haven't got, or not wanting something we have got. And we get anxious, nervous, worried about it. Why? Let it go. See the lack of necessity of what it is that you want. Or see the lack of necessity of what it is you're trying to hold on to. And just put it down and the anxiety's gone. So somebody practicing anapanasati, their mind's drifting, dreaming, daydreaming. And becoming, let me just read the question. Sorry. During meditation, I observe my breath. If I relax, I start daydreaming and forget about my breath. If I extend effort and focus very well on the point around my nose, observing the breath there, I start to get tired, and often the number of distracting thoughts only increases. am I correct in understanding that it is important to find the right balance between relaxation and focus? Yes, you're correct in understanding it's about finding the right balance, but not between perhaps relaxation and focus. I think one can have both. One can relax and focus without tensing up and concentrating. Relaxing and focusing are absolutely the correct words. And if you apply them to your practice, the problems you've just described will go away. Because where you're really trying to concentrate on the tip of the nose for the breath, perhaps just see the breath, the entire body of air, as it's described in the Anapanasati Sutta by the Buddha himself. See the whole body of air, not in the body, the amount of air you inhale, and then that same amount of air you exhale is a body of air, like you have a body of water in a lake or a pond. The body of air coming in and body of air going out doesn't have to necessarily be noticed at a particular point. You can still know that you're inhaling and know you're exhaling without identifying a particular point. If the point is particularly obvious, you can just relax and observe it there. But if you're having to concentrate, then this isn't focus, it is concentration. And back to your exams and tests, if you're focusing, you're concentrating in an exam, your eye muscles around here are tensing up, and you often at the end of a test have a headache. Whenever you've been concentrating for too long, you might have a headache. It's through tension of your neck muscles, your temples, your eye muscles, tensing. If you just relax, your eyes go into focus. You do not need to squint your eyes up to focus. Or maybe you do if you've got a little bit of bad eyesight. But naturally speaking, you don't. If you just open your eyes, relax, you will see in focus, or as good enough that you can see with the correct correction. And this is sufficient. Similarly with the breath. If you know the breath is coming in and the breath is going out, this is sufficient. It is focusing on the breath, not concentrating. So you've answered your question in your final statement there. Often questions answer themselves like this. That focus and relaxation is what it's about. If you just focus, you can relax. And that's all you need to do. But if you concentrate, then you will get tired because of the tension. And also because it's not so pleasant, your mind will wander into other things. So we develop an interest in the breath. We develop an interest in the pleasure we derive from the enjoyment of the breath. By that I mean the refreshing, revitalizing, invigorating qualities of breathing. When we enjoy a lovely cold drink on a hot summer's day, we enjoy it, don't we? Because it's quenching our thirst and it's satisfying a need, a wholesome need, a desire. And similarly with the breath. When we see it as that, as enjoyable, cooling, invigorating, refreshing, a quality to it, we can enjoy it for all of its restorative properties and the very nature of breathing. What a wonderful thing it is when we really focus on the activity of breathing itself, rather than the distractions that pull us away from that meditation object. So, a bit more there on Anapanasati. Yes. So can I please tell about the concept of God in Buddhism? If there are no gods, then tell me the supernatural or such version in Buddhism and its effect on humans. So in my own practice, I'm kind of reading my answer here, being a bit lazy. In my own practice of Buddhism, I take only the word of the Buddha and choose not to believe or disbelieve in any conceptual ideas, but rather strive to understand the truth, the truth that is evident in our lives all around us. So yes, in Buddhist cosmology, in Buddhist mythology, and in different traditions of Buddhism, there is all sorts of stuff as a kleptomaniac or a hoarder one can collect. But if you're a letter-goer like me, a renunciant samana who really wants little to do with much at all, other than the pure enjoyment of the Dharma, the truth itself, and this wonderful practice and this life, then I kind of just leave that alone. So I'm not the best person to ask. But if you're interested in that, and for instance, as you say, the spiritual side of things, not spiritual, supernatural is the word you say, supernatural side of things, then you may find something that answers your interest in the Vajrayana traditions or Tibetan traditions, even perhaps more so than Mahayana, because Mahayana isn't that so different to Theravada, but it does have a little bit more in the way of its depiction, its description, its suttas relating to deities and devas, which is perhaps our version of God and gods. But we don't have one God, we don't have one heaven or hell, we have various gods and various heavenly and hell realms in Buddhist mythology and cosmology. Mythology in that it can't be proven. Now it is the word of the Buddha, he does describe these things, it is in the suttas, so I'm not disputing it, which is why I say I don't disbelieve anything. But it isn't also said in the suttas that it is necessary to take this on board as something one has to quote chapter and verse. So I won't be throwing quotes from the suttas saying, yes, but the Buddha says there is this hell realm, this heavenly realm, this is where you'll go if you do this, because it's irrelevant. What matters is what we do now within this life. This is how we are generating karma, which is actions of body, speech and mind, generating vipaka, the results of those actions of body, speech and mind. Whether they be wholesome or unwholesome, we are the heirs, we will inherit those results from those actions. So, some bugs. Okay, thank you for that. I think that one. Someone talking about, I said home is anywhere, but they have a however. Commonly if they're in Europe or the UK and this and that and the other, metta isn't high. So I was probably saying home is anywhere in relation to the four Brahma Viharas, metta, karuna, mudita and upekkha, I would imagine. So if you're in Europe, example UK, then metta isn't very high because there are places like McDonald's and KFC, meat trading places, and proof that we are not one. Well, I didn't say we are one, that's a different religion. Specifically, I may have referred to our bodies being all one in terms of the elements of earth, water, wind, fire, or solidity, liquidity, gas, gaseous and temperature qualities, in addition space and consciousness of these. Now, I often say that because these are undeniable facts of human nature. But it's also the case that both in Thailand and perhaps not so much here, but also in parts of India and in the cities, people still eat meat. And in Thailand, certainly up until a few decades ago, there was much more meat and fish eaten than vegetables. It was a very carnivorous country, but it's a very Buddhist country. So vegetarianism has been brought into Buddhism a lot more out of its origin, out of these southern traditions surrounding India, which are the most closely representative versions of Buddhism to the original Buddha's teachings and the original Buddhist India. where it's spread out, and especially into the West, most Buddhists are vegetarian. I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan, but I was before I was Buddhist. Well, before I was a monk, and I became vegetarian when I came to India, because it's a very nice place to be vegetarian. For the first time I became vegetarian, and I just carried it on because it was cheaper. That's the only reason, not particularly ethical reasons. But we don't kill, and we mustn't eat anything we think that's been killed for our purpose. So I don't think it's fair to say there's no metta, no loving kindness or karuna or mudita in UK or Europe. I think there's a considerable amount of metta, loving kindness, all over the world. But where it begins is within ourselves. And when we can see it in ourselves, when we develop those qualities in ourselves, we do automatically see it in others. Now, you cannot necessarily condone the activities of large organisations like McDonald's and KFC, but that is the case for all major conglomerates, organisations and companies and superpowers and governments. But we're not here to fight that battle. We're here to fight the much harder battle of our own minds, our own defilements, our own greed, hatred and delusion. Now, if you can conquer that and become an arahant, then, you can conquer the world. But start where it's practical to do your work, and that is at home with yourself, with your own personal development. Develop metta, karuna, mudita. They are the loving kindness, compassion and joy for others. And upekkha, equanimity, in yourself, and then worry about others. So home is anywhere. Whether you're in Europe, there are some wonderful Buddhist monasteries in my own country where I began. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. So there's plenty of mudita and compassion there for those monks to be living in England, in their communities and teaching the Dharma. So, yes. And that's the sounds of India. We've mentioned that already. Well, am I in Thailand? No, I'm in India. You want to meet up, come to India, or when I'm back in Thailand, you'll know. Keep watching this channel, you'll know where I am. But I'm pretty sure now that I'll be going to Sri Lanka next, before returning to Thailand, because I've not been there. It's also a Buddhist country, and it would be, I think, interesting to experience another Buddhist country. I've been to Thailand a lot, spent a lot of years in Thailand, so I know it very well. Only within my monastery. I don't know Thailand as a country particularly well at all, because I've only been to 2 or 3 places and they've been monasteries. But the culture in Thailand, in that respect, the Buddhist culture, and I've been to Cambodia, which is a Buddhist country, a little bit to Laos, which is a Buddhist country, Nepal, which is a kind of Buddhist country, but Sri Lanka, no, I haven't been. So as I have to go again, travel again, this not being able to stay in one place when you're foreign, situation of visas, albeit I can stay in Thailand. But they're a little more flexible with monks there. So I'm going to go to Sri Lanka just to explore the upasakas and upasakas culture there, because wherever I go my practice is the same, but it's interesting to see how non-monks society benefits from the culture. So I just keep moving. It's part of my practice. It'll be much the same as here. From my daily point of view, the routine is the same, the food is much the same, my practice is much the same, just a different place. So, yes, I'm not sure I understand that question. How do you prevent from getting hungry later on in the day? That's a straightforward question. Well, you can't prevent getting hungry later on in the day. You're referring to my speaking about only eating one meal. Now, I think this is really a practice just for either people who are on retreat practicing just meditation, or upasakas on their 8 precept a day, maybe the Uposatha, the full moon and new moon, or just on occasions at the weekend. I think if you're working, even if it's not a physical job but it's mentally taxing, you do need probably more than 1 meal a day. But for monks, then you only need 1 meal a day, unless you are not really being a monk. If you're doing lots of building projects and work and jobs, then yes, that's okay, you probably do need some more to eat. But I'm referring to the monastic practice of literally just practicing meditation and learning the Dharma. So a relatively sedentary lifestyle. However, I heard someone a monk comment about this, monks aren't sedentary. No, of course, I walk. Even now here, I make sure I walk about 6 kilometers a day, probably not much more than that, but I'm walking 9 to 12 kilometers a day in, day out normally, and a lot more than that when I'm on Tudong. That's a lot of walking, plus walking meditation whilst I'm here, which I don't count into that mileage. So probably I am up to 9 to 12 kilometers a day. Another activity which keeps people fit, monks fit, is when you just sit on the floor. Everything you do requires getting up. What was the question? Oh yeah, so let me get back to the question. So yes, you still do get hungry, but with time you get used to it, as long as you're living a monastic life and you're not. I wouldn't recommend it for someone who's got a physical job or a mentally taxing job. But back to then what I was saying. A monk who's not sitting on luxurious beds and sofas and chairs, or in office chairs at a desk, for instance, everything I do requires me getting up from the floor up, because not everything, well, most things I suppose, I can put my pindapat there and my bag there, and everything's within reach that I own. But things I have to do require me getting up, and then when I finish, getting down again onto the floor. Even sleeping at night, I have to get up from the floor if I need to go to the toilet, to go outside and then come back again. This actually requires quite a lot of physical effort and activity. You'll see at the end of this talk, I will have to get up from this. Although I'm up on a platform, I'm the same as sitting on the floor, and then step down and walk. When you're sitting on a chair, you kind of slide off and you structure your houses ergonomically so that everything's within reach, within remote controls for the TV and this, that and the other. We have our lives, driving even, everything's within reach. But as a monk, living this life on a floor, you do have quite a lot of exercise. So yes, you do get hungry, but you get used to it and you see it as hunger arising. And we do have some cures. We can have a little spoonful of butter, a little spoonful of honey, or sugar, or oil. So there's 4 things, chatu madhu, that are allowed to be taken as a medicine really in the afternoon to alleviate that. Say we become faint or something like that. I've become faint before and had to make do with something I found, not quite within that description, but close enough, some cheese or something like that, or some black chocolate. But yes, you will get hungry, but this is also part of the practice, to experience hunger, to know this as a temporary feeling. It doesn't kill you. Mostly hunger is just desire out of boredom, wanting something nice. It's not really hungry. If you eat once a day, you're not really hungry. You might say you're starving, but of course you're not starving. That means your body is starved of its nutrients and going to die. The cells are dying off. That's never the case. And if it is, then you really are suffering. So that's a problem. There are many people starving in the world, of course. But in reference to being just hungry and the way we lightly use that phrase, it's never really that accurate or factual. Okay, so I don't know whether how long I've been talking. I think, though, that will have to be enough, because I don't want to go on too long. So I hope there's something within those comments of yours that I've picked at and hopefully made of some use to you. If there is, then please share that with others and use it. If it's not, then don't let it trouble you and just let it go. It's not a problem. but maybe come back and watch again and try next time. And at that I shall leave it and say thank you for watching and goodbye. And you can see that I have to get up now, therefore exercising my legs and my the rest of my body, and even in this sedentary life, keeping fit. Okay. I must say these termites are getting more than one meal a day because they're eating me.